Hey everybody, it's the Mad Woman, and I'm taking a break from my usual uploading schedule, as erratic as that may be, to explain something that is close to home to me. For those of you who haven't seen my other videos, I am a direct descendant from Cubans. My parents and their parents came from there, and I still have family there that I have never met. My mom was 16 when they left by plane to start their lives as American citizens in Miami, Florida. My father's family left when he was 9, and they lived for 14 years in New York before moving to Miami to meet, and my dad married my mom. My father joined the Air Force and fought in Vietnam. I was told about what life was like in Cuba before and after Batista. My mom often said, and I'm paraphrasing here, it wasn't all candy and roses under Batista, but we had 2 farms and 3 businesses under him. We didn't like a lot of what he was doing, but there were those of us that saw Fidel for what he was, a tyrant, but too many others were tired of Batista, so they wanted to believe life would be better under Fidel Castro. This over here is a video that I did on Wet Foot, Dry Foot, so this won't be included in this video or the rest of the video series I'm doing on Cuba U.S. policies. So the link to this will be below. And let me apologize beforehand for the audio. It was before I got my mic, so the audio is pretty crappy. You have been warned. So now let's roll the intro and get started with the video series.
De Cuba traigo el son ritmo sabroso, de Cuba dulce caña y rico ron, café como no hay otro en el Caribe, y el más citado golpe del bongo. Por Cuba tengo la sangre caliente, en Cuba guardo el alma y corazón, y si alza con alegre melodía, mi voz cuando mi negro rompe un guaguancó, canta conmigo a pecho abierto esta canción que me ha brotado de mi...
Batista, in his first time ruling, had progressive views. He had a constitution drafted which included government regulations on businesses and social programs, which provided safety nets for the Cuban people. He also legalized the Partido Comunista de Cuba, Popular Socialist Party. Didn't take him too long to incorporate the PSP into his government. In 1944, he stepped down for 8 years, letting El Partido Auténtico, or the Cuban Revolutionary Party, take over. Taken aback by the corruption they found, they did their best to manage the government. In 1952, Batista took advantage of the open elections, but found himself third behind Fidel Castro. He staged a successful coup d'etat, arrested Fidel and Raul Castro, and set about undoing everything he tried to do the first time he was in office. That's right, he was no longer touting the progressive line. His goal was to amass wealth and gain the favor of the Cuban elitists, who had constantly snubbed him. Greed had gotten a hold on Fulgencio, and he opened Havana up to gambling on a grand stage. This got the attention of Lucky Luciano, who quickly placed his moneyman Meyer Lansky in the middle of Cuba's gambling scene. Batista touted he could match hotel investment pound for pound, and also invested in grandiose construction projects like the Havana Veradero Highway and the Ranchos Boyeros Airport, just to name 2. His popularity began to wane as he faced mounting opposition. To fix this, he lessened restrictions on the press and even released political prisoners. You guessed it, he freed Fidel and his brother Raul, a decision that would cost him dearly. While Batista was doing everything he could to maintain rule, Fidel Castro was amassing rebel forces to overthrow the dictator and seize control of Cuba. He found an ally in his fight, an Argentinian doctor by the name of Ernesto Che Guevara. They received backing from a rebel army, the revolutionaries against Batista, from the Sierra Maestra Mountains in Cuba itself. January 1st, 1959 was the day Castro invaded in the capital and forced Batista to flee the island. A parade of tanks rolled toward the capital and cheers and waving flags ensued. During his warm acceptance, Fidel instituted the first agrarian reform law, which did as follows. Number 1, limited land holdings to 993 acres. Number 2, split apart latifundias. It's interesting they use this term here. This implies slavery was alive in Cuba at this time, even though it was abolished in 1886. Latifundias are large plantations which use slave labor to work the fields. 3. Redistributed said land to those who worked it, taking it away from landowners. And 4. He also turned private cattle ranches into state-run ranches. The majority of the lands that were split were nationalized, meaning they were in state control, not the control of the people who owned it. Nice guy, huh? His generosity didn't end there. He nationalized all the U.S. companies in Cuba in 1960 and offered no compensation to those companies. This is what led to the trade embargo. Castro was on a mission: resist the imperial world. He forced nationalism into all aspects of Cuban life by reducing civil liberties to next to nothing, eradicating free speech, and even outlawing entertainment and the open practice of religion. Any religion. Anyone opposing Castro was forced into labor camps, or gulags, as were black people, homosexuals, and anyone that did not agree with him. He held one-sided trials which often led to executions. There will be people who will probably watch this video and tout his accomplishments in the comments section below. I will address those now before the comments get put there. Most people would say he provided socialist health care. Well, in a way he did, with poorly maintained facilities, poorly treated patients, and a morgue with deceased stacked like cordwood. The link to the article is in the description, but I warn you, it's not a pretty sight. Others would boast about the educational system, which guarantees education for all nationals, but they will conveniently leave out that it is coming apart at the seams with underpaid and underqualified teachers, out-of-date books, and run-down classrooms. They are abandoning journalism schools and looking for more tradesmen by opening more vocational schools, because during the last 2 decades the number of craftsmen has fallen to almost nothing. This includes doctors and teachers. Most of the qualified doctors are sent abroad to help with war-torn, disease-ridden countries. Even housing and roads are falling apart. So now on to the next part of the video, which is the Bay of Pigs and what happened there. During the 2 years that followed Castro's coup d'etat, the dictator worsened relations between the U.S. and Cuba. Cuban exiles were trying to find a way to topple Fidel's regime and gain control. This got the attention of the U.S. government, who financed the CIA to train 1,400 exiles to go back to Cuba and stage a coup, lightly armed. The hope was that Cuban nationals would rise up to help the lightly armed exiles and overthrow Fidel. It didn't work as planned. Fidel was tipped off beforehand, which led to the exiles being counter-striked on the beach, leading to the death of over 100 of the exiles, with the rest of them being captured. Not one of the citizens on the island raised a finger to help. This made his leadership of the island stronger, and he got more aid from Russia, which included nuclear missiles. This led to the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962. Kennedy accepted the blame for the botched invasion, but most saw him as indecisive and weak for doing so. In 2006, Fidel was too ill to continue leading Cuba and turned the leadership role over to his brother Raul. I hope this informed you of what happened to bring Fidel into power and what he did after the coup d'etat. The next video will be about Obama's directive and his concessions to Raul. I'll also delve into what these concessions and the opening of tourism to Cuba by Raul has done to the Cuban people as a whole. I hope you will join me for that video as well. Until next time, take care of yourselves.